And I'm going to be.
Hey, everybody, Dave Whitley here. Welcome back to the Advancing Man Project podcast. Today, for my guest, I have my new friend. We just met for the first time on this call, Seth Movsovitz. I hope I said that right. And
You slayed it. You crushed it, as my
good.
kids say. You crushed it.
Yay, me. Well, as I encourage my son to say when he has his, even a minor success, I am proud of myself for doing that. Um, because I don't want external validation all the time. um, so I'm glad to have you on the show. I'm looking forward to having a conversation, getting to know you a little bit better, and helping you promote the message that you have. Just quick background on Seth. He's got 4 kids, and his words, my life and my world revolves around them. And that right there is enough for me to want to talk to a guy. We met in a Facebook group, the Dads Assisting Dads Club. And when I put out a call out for guests on there, Seth's like, "Hey, I'd love to come talk." And the thing that won me over is he is all about creating a movement for what he calls proud dads. There's 75 million dads in America, and it's time for us to embrace our role as fathers, as it is our greatest accomplishment in life. That hooked me in right there, and I'm all over it. Our roles changed. Our role. These are his words again. So our role, his words again. Uh, Our roles changed dramatically in the last 30 years, and this movement celebrates the change and also bring dads closer together by connecting and supporting each other. He's a former elementary school teacher turned entrepreneur, um, has some interesting merchandise available at dadfrat.com. And so, Seth, appreciate you coming on the show. And first thing I want to do is just encourage you to talk about the Proud Dads movement, the Dad Frat movement, whatever you want to call it, and how about how that came about. Let's jump into that and tell me more.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Dave. I really appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure meeting you. So, uh, to give you the full genesis of how this dad frat thing came about, and then it evolved into sort of a movement and a brand. And we're still in the infant stages, but if you go back to when my wife and I had our first child in '97, we had our daughter Macy, and out of our friend group, um, you've got your buddies you hang out with. We were the first ones to have a kid in our friend group, so we had Macy, and um, all the wives were all over her, and this, that, and the other. Well, one of our buddies, they announced that they were pregnant, and this was about, I don't know, close to a year or a year and a half after we had our child. And so when I heard that, I went up to my buddy Roger, aka Cool Breeze. I went up to Cool Breeze and I smacked him upside the back of the head. Just I didn't, you just do stupid stuff because we're stupid people. So I smacked him upside the back of the head and I said, "Welcome to the fraternity." And that kind of was the start of it. So that was the seed right there. And then as they got closer to the birth of their child, I kept thinking, man, when I saw my child, when I saw Macy, my daughter, and just like you, Dave, when you saw your son for the first time, that world as you knew it before that changed right there.
Yep.
You automatically saw things in a different light when you laid eyes on your first child. And I think that that's true for every dad, because if you sit down and think about childbirth and your baby, it's a miracle. It's just incredible. So I wanted to get Cool Breeze a gift to commemorate, that moment, to
Right.
capture that moment. And so you go looking around, and there's no gift. Um, there's no brand or no gift for dads. There's like bubblegum cigars, or you get a balloon, or I mean, there's
Yeah.
just, you get alcohol. Um, but there was nothing there. So I was just playing around with some ideas one day, and I was in a fraternity in college, and so I thought to myself, fraternity dad. So I wrote out on a napkin. I said, what would that be? Dad in Greek letters. So I wrote out Delta Alpha Delta, and it made the the word dad in Greek letters. And I thought, hey, that's kind of cool. Maybe I'll make a gift with it and put that on there. So
Right.
I didn't know anything about it. So I went and looked online, and um, nobody had made that company, or it wasn't trademarked or whatever. So um, I just thought, oh, that's kind of cool. I think I'll do something with that. So that's what I did, and I actually started making some T-shirts and stuff. My brother was working with me on it, and we sold a few items to some local hospital gift shops. So when Cool Breeze had his first child, I was able to give him I think a T-shirt that said Delta Alpha Delta. Well, that's the genesis of the whole brand, and this is before the internet was big, and I didn't really put much time into it, so we never really sold much of anything with Delta Alpha Delta. And after introducing it to different people, if I was wearing a Delta Alpha Delta shirt, they would look at me and go, "Oh, are you a Tri-Delt?" Or, "Oh, are you a AAA? Do I need to go check my car? Am I parked illegally?" Because
Triple A.
American public doesn't know, they don't understand Greek letters.
Right.
You know, they can figure it out. So I'm like, oh, this will never work. So anyway, just kind of let it die out. And the whole time we were doing with that, messing around with it, the nickname for Delta Alpha Delta was Dad Frat. We called it Dad Frat just jokingly. Well,
Right.
then just kind of sat on it and held on to the Dad Frat idea. And then, like, we would be out, and my family member or my wife and I would be at the mall or something, and we'd see a dad with his kids on his shoulder, or a dad holding hands with his kids, and we'd look at each other and go, Dad Frat, Dad Frat, Dad, Dad Frat, Dad, Dad Frat, Dad. So I don't know why, but I trademarked it, Dad Frat, in 2015, and just sat on it. Just thought maybe one day we can do something with it. Um, so pretty much just sat on it, and then um, COVID hit, and it really hurt. I'm in the home care industry,
Mm-hmm.
so our everything shut down for us, like everybody else, and revenue was dried up, and I was beating my head against the wall, going, "Oh my gosh, I got to do something else, or I need another source of income. This is scary." So that's when I thought, well, maybe I'll try to do something with Dad Frat. So that's when I had someone make a website for it, and been playing around with it. Dad Frat is a standalone brand for basically the official brand for proud dads who love their kids. It's as
Right.
simple as that. Um, so did some research with that, tried some different things, and did some more reading on branding and marketing and movements. And this is all kind of new to me because I was in the elder care industry. So I decided to switch gears recently, and I think that's why one of the reasons why I reached out to you. Um, Instead of focusing on Dad Frat more as like a brand, um, I would like to um, introduce and grow, hopefully, however, Dad Frat as a movement for proud dads. And when I say that, I'm not saying that, oh, you know, dads are better than moms, or
Right.
anything like that. That's not what it's about. It's about the change in our society, which you previously mentioned. In the last 20, 30 years, especially, the role of dad in the American family has changed
Mm-hmm.
dramatically. We are much more hands-on. I mean, just look at the demographics. Look at both husband and wife working. Look at some wives are the breadwinners, and the husband stays home and takes care of the kids. Um, a lot of single parent dads, whatever the reason is, and we're not blaming it or on anything. We're just saying we're recognizing this, and the end result is that we are much more involved in the raising our children, more hands-on, cooking, clean, the what they call back in the day the household chores or
Right.
household activities, that then the 50s moms used to do everything. Well, we're doing some of that now. And this movement is all about saying, hey, everybody, this is happening right now in our country, in our society. And we are going to recognize it. You have to recognize something that's happening. And B, we're going to celebrate it because it's the greatest thing in the world. I love being a dad. My children are older now, but helping raise the kids, the diapers, the bathing, the shopping, the dressing, all those things, I love being a part of that. And
Absolutely.
we know that the studies, um, is mom more important than dad more important? No, they're both important. It's crucial that both of them are involved and active in raising the child together. But that's the movement that I want to focus on, and it's what I like to call shining the spotlight on all 75 million proud dads, basically saying you guys are doing a great job, and we can do better too. We
Right.
can work together, we can share, we can communicate, we can connect, we can do even better. And the end result out of all this is healthier children, healthier families, better citizens. um, so that's, I know it's windy, but that's the movement. That's what it's all about, is all these proud dads taking pride in what you're doing. Um, Celebrate it is one of the greatest things that we're going to do in our lifetimes.
I love that. I love that it's not only recognized, but it's also celebrate, because if we look at how being a dad has been portrayed through the various generations, um, and I talk about this a lot in my coaching programs and in everything that I do around that, where I'm talking with men about essentially you become a better dad by becoming a better man first. And what so many of us inherited as an idea of what it means to be a dad, there's really only two places that it comes from. It's our own personal experience with the dad or the male figures that we grew up with, and that can be hit and miss. You could have had a great situation, or you could have had a really terrible situation, or anywhere in between there. But even more so than that, I think that we, in the past 50 years or so, as technology has evolved the way that it has, have been inundated with various different stereotypes, very one-dimensional stereotypes of what dads are and what a dad's role is. And you have largely not very desirable characteristics being portrayed as these stereotypes. You have complete bumbling idiots like Homer Simpson. And then
Right.
you have if you go back and look at some of the older TV shows and stuff from the 50s that you're talking about, the way the culture was then, or the way it was portrayed at least, dad would get up, dad would go to work, dad would come home, dad would, you know, talk to the kids for a few minutes at dinner. They'd go to bed. He'd play golf on the weekends, and then he'd talk about how quick they grow up. You spent 4 hours a month with them, No wonder it seemed like it
Yeah.
went by fast. So you're sort of this absent provider, and like your job is to just, as long as you're fed and clothed, then my job as a dad is done, and meanwhile he's banging a secretary or whatever. And then you have like your like iron-fisted disciplinarian, where the dad's job is just to come in and lay the smack down, and I think about um the movie, or that was based on the play Fences with Denzel Washington, where he has the conversation with he's either young teen or preteen, somewhere in that age range, son in there, and the son asks point blank, he's very vulnerable, says, why did you never like me? And the response was just heart-wrenching. It's like, I don't have to like you. I have a responsibility to you. My job is to provide for you and to make sure that you're safe, but I don't have to like you. And I'm like, that just rips my
Mm.
heart out thinking about it. But there's a lot of of that sort of information floating around in the media that we cannot help but absorb into ourselves as this being a part of what a dad life actually is. And all you have to do is go spend 20 or 30 minutes in any bigger dad group on Facebook and find that there's a lot of that attitude that is still prevalent. And so the idea that stay-at-home dad still equals being a man, and that
Yeah,
changing a diaper
yeah,
is a manly activity, and that your job's not to just yell at your kid and try to get him to act right or to put food on the table. I love that it's recognized and being celebrated, like you said.
yeah. And what you're speaking to is that's ingrained in our culture, but I think it's weeding itself out, and it's going to weed itself out. And I believe that the dad from the 50s that you spoke of is going to be more of the exception rather than the norm. The norm's going to be you. It's going to be me. It's going to be all these dads that are active and that are in our Facebook groups and that are out there now. Um, you talked about the dad just I don't have to like you or whatever.
Right.
Well, we know that's nonsense. That's horrible. But the number one thing in my mind that our children want from us is attention. Attention. Not toys, not gifts. They want our attention. They want to connect. They want us to spend time with them. And I'm not going to go into how I was raised, how you were raised. Um, it's we all have our stories, and our parents did what they could. But my dad was a workaholic,
Hmm.
and he had to for us to survive and to be able to cover the expenses and put food on the table. So he was in a we had a family business for over 100 years in the produce industry, and that starts at 3:30, 4 in the morning.
Right.
Pulling orders, and he wouldn't get home till 5 or 6, and eat dinner and pass out, do it all over again. He was just that's what he did. So inherently, as I was growing up, um, you plan maybe consciously or subconsciously what you're going to do as a dad, what you're going to do for your future. And in my mind, it was I wanted to have a family, and I was going to spend every second possible with my children and their development and being with them. Now, I don't want it to come across as, oh, Seth's a helicopter. No, I'm not a helicopter parent at all. I'm there. If my kids need something, I'm there. I'm not going to smother them. I didn't miss any activities. My job allowed me to be at everything. And
Hmm.
I'm just so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for the fact that my wife was a teacher too. Well, we started our careers that way, but she was able to stay home with the kids when they were in the primary earlier years, and that was huge. But that was pretty much my goal in life, was to have children, and I'm not going to say um, completely change my upbringing with their upbringing, but I saw some things that I would want to try to improve upon. And, I'm grateful that I was able to do that. And, my wife and I to this day, we're very proud of our children. They're very respectful, um, very empathetic, and passionate um, adults now,
Hmm.
most of them. And, the kind of kids where nothing made me prouder or my wife prouder as when our children would go younger ages, they would go spend the night with friends. We'd pick them up the next day, and the parent would meet us at the door and said, your child is very, very polite and very nice. We loved having so and so here. He's welcome anytime. I mean, we were walking on air. We were
Right.
just that nothing made us happier than that. And What we did with that, though, Dave, is we didn't just sit on it. We pulled that child aside, my wife and I, and said, listen, we just said it on. We talked to Mr. So and so, and they said that you did this. And we said, we're so proud of you for that. You know, that's so wonderful, and we just want to say thank you for that. And just like you're speaking to earlier, you know, we're not giving out participation trophies anywhere. It's and as a teacher, there's a phrase we used, and it was called "catch them being good."
Mhm.
You know, in the classroom. Well, we catch our kids being good, and it's genuine. And then you point it out and say, "Hey, here's why this is good, and here's why we're proud of you." Then that is a meaningful experience that they connect on, and that, you know, those slowly build and become a foundation of who that individual is.
Definitely. Talking about the roles of dads and how it's changed and where we are now, there's, you know, it's light years difference for sure. Where do you envision the role of dads going into the future?
Um, Hold that thought, because I forgot to make another point,
Okay.
and we'll get to that.
Sure.
This this whole this whole movement of recognizing the change for the good, dads being more involved. Um, I I like to liken that. There's some similarities with the women's movement in the 60s and 70s,
Mhm.
where the women were leaving the house to enter the workforce. You know, that was part of it, and they wanted equal rights and equal pay and this and that. Well, it, it's kind of the opposite here to some extent. Some of the dads are leaving the workforce and coming into the homes and becoming, you know, more hands-on and and raising the kids. But the question you asked about where do I see it going? I see it as where it is right now, and I see it in my mind improving, getting better. I see it as your podcast here, you know, maybe the dad frat movement or these other dad groups. That's going to permeate throughout our society. And as we talk about our roles have changed and you know, us dads being more involved, it's going to be, like I mentioned before, more of the norm than the exception. And we're just going to keep building on that, I believe, and we're going to continue to be hands-on and help raise our kids, uh, you know, alongside with our partner or our wives. And I'm hoping that that, like I said before, the end result is hoping it'll help create better citizens, but more well-rounded children that grow up to adults.
I love that.
So I see it as getting better in my mind.
I agree. And I think that a lot of what we're talking about here, because my wife and I both work from home. Our son has never once been in a daycare, and we did that by design. I used to travel a lot, and I haven't traveled nearly as much since he was born. And of course, part of that had to do with the world being shut down for the better part of a year and a half. But
Right.
we are very fortunate in that we were able to design our life ahead of time that we could both be with him and not have to put him in daycare. And if someone's putting their kids in daycare because that's what they have to do because their economic
Absolutely.
situation, that
Yes.
you do what's best for you. I'm saying that we made the choice on the front end that that's how we wanted to do things. And I'm not, you know, criticizing or judging anyone for doing something different from the way that I'm doing it. But um, in doing that, I can see a lot of what it looks like for a man who is a stay-at-home dad, because we split our time up, and when my wife's working, I'm doing dad stuff, and when I'm working, she's with him. She's doing mom stuff, you know, or parent stuff, as the case may be. So what I've found out through just self-study and understanding, you know, like child behavioral development and brain development, and like, okay, we've got this little blob of flesh that we brought home because he's only 5, right? We're probably similar age. I'm 54. How old are you?
Um, I could be your father.
Okay. Um,
I'm 57.
yeah, yeah. Well, that would be tough to pull off, but you could. Um,
No,
so we brought him home and I'm like, who do I want to be for this kid? And so we started designing a life around that. And it's not those stereotypes. It's not the way that I was brought up. And it's very much the evolution of the things that you're talking about there. But what I found out from being involved in different Facebook groups around dads from different ages and different demographics and cultures and upbringings and ideologies and all of that sort of stuff, that a lot of what we're talking about is challenging some of the concepts that have been driven into us of what masculinity itself actually is. I had never changed a diaper. First diaper I changed was the first time my son's diaper ever got changed. And I was so excited about it and I was grooving on it. And then I found out later on that uh some of my relatives on my wife's side, they couldn't wrap their mind around dad changing a diaper on a newborn, that was just like some weird foreign concept. And I'm like, you didn't do that? This is the most amazing thing. And they're like, no, 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 I don't want any part of that. And stuff like skin to skin contact with the newborn. I don't know if that's anything that was prevalent when your kids were younger because they're older now, but that was I loved that. And just
yeah,
being able to be there and take part of that. And I think it's very challenging to what some of these stereotypical uh misconceptions about what masculinity actually is. And that pops up when I talk about the sort of stuff, especially when we're talking about like emotional regulation with young kids. And like, he's 5. He doesn't have the same reasoning capacity that a grown man would have. And so I have to meet him where he is if I want him to understand and I want him to trust me and I want to be able to guide him and teach him. And I'll answer a question or make a post like that in some of these groups, and then it'll be like, "Well, you're raising soft kids, and you need to whip that ass and just, punishment, all this kind of stuff." And I'm like, "You don't get it. You don't get it. You're stuck in a place that doesn't serve you, and that's fine. But
yeah.
you're
That's.
also
I mean,
criticizing people who are evolving."
that's part of that process that we've already addressed, and that it is changing. It's changing now. We're still going to have those guys out there, but I believe that they will be more of the exception rather than the norm, in due time, because of people like you and me and all these other groups that are bringing us to the forefront. And this whole thing about, masculinity and old school dads, you know, that's that's those are stereotypes that are going by the wayside slowly. They're slowly eroding. You talk about masculinity, if you're changing a diaper, you're not masculine. That's a that's just a myth now. The
Right.
same goes for emotions, men's emotions. Same goes for mental health, mental illness. These are all things that, um, when I say the role of dads have changed, these are some of the things that are changing along with it. More men are asking for help, um, and it's going to take time, but I think more time for this than some of the other issues, and that is, um, you're less of a man if you seek mental health advice or therapy. In all actuality, you're more of a man for doing that, and that's something that, as the dad frat movement hopefully starts to grow, I want to incorporate that into the dialogue, because my family's had issues. I lost a family member to suicide in 2002, and it still hurts. And um, I envision down the road, if things got going with this movement or brand or whatever, I would love to be able to create a foundation, like a dad frat I don't like the word mental. Mental has the negative connotation. It's going to be hard to get rid of. I would replace it with mind, Dad Frat Mind Health Foundation. Hey, we break an ankle, we get it x-rayed, we get it fixed,
Right.
right? We're having issues emotionally, this, that, and the other. Well, we can't take an x-ray and see what's going on in there, but it is in the mind, and the mind is hurting, or the mind needs help, or it needs guidance. So let's try to make those resources more available and make it tear down the barriers so that there's less of a stigma if you do seek that type of help. So these are all things that are going as part of this whole movement, this shift. These are some of the stereotypes that will be taken down with us.
I love everything that you just said about the mind health and everything that goes along with that. The group that we met in, the Dads Club, two of the guys that started that group, Shane Weston and Jeremiah Karish, got together with a few other guys that they knew online and started the group primarily as a way for men to have a safe group place that they could go and talk about what was going on when they were having issues like that. Jeremiah's been very open with his background with addiction and overcoming that, and now he's a stay-at-home dad. Shane's talked about his past as well. I've actually had both of those guys on the show. They're wonderful, wonderful men, wonderful human beings, fantastic dads, and they started the group, I don't know how many years ago, but there's 50 something thousand guys in there now, and all of it kind of hinged on the idea that if we trace it back to like its core moment, this stereotypical saying that has perpetuated culture of boys don't cry, or
Right.
stop crying like a little girl or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And just the incredible amount of like nuclear levels of destruction that radiate out of that. Because the message there is it's not okay for you to feel sad. It's not okay for you
Right.
to feel disappointed. And you are less than a man if you feel those things. And so
Right.
boys taught from, again, we're talking stereotypes here, but it still has its repercussions going on into today. Boys taught from such a young age to suppress their feelings and not be vulnerable. Um,
Right.
I don't think it's a coincidence that you fast forward 3, 4 decades later, and now you've got a guy with addiction issues, or you've got a guy who has an explosive anger problem because the only way that he has been allowed to accept a negative emotion is if it's expressed in rage, right? And it turns into anxiety and depression and self-hatred and addiction and all these different things. And you're right. The movement has to evolve in the direction of we're not just tough guys, whatever the hell that
Right.
means. Because I think that the strongest, most manly thing that you can do is to be open and vulnerable with your emotions in front of your kids. I've told the story several times about a few years ago. My dad passed away in 2020. My son was about 18 months old at the time, and his birthday in 2022, so about a year and a half ago, was in December. And I was feeling it that day. I was, listening to some audio recordings that I had from him and just kind of hanging out and missing him a lot. And my son comes up to me and he says, "Daddy, why does your face look like that?" And I
Wow.
immediately knew what he was talking about. And like I even having done the work on myself that I've done, my immediate like gut level response was, "No, I'm fine." But I have committed to not being that guy. I've committed to like one of my fundamental principles as a dad is that can I find a way in every single interaction I have with my son to leave him better off somehow than he was? That might be a high five after he's, done something cool, or it might be something like the story I'm telling right now. And so I said, no, that's not who I am. That's not who I'm going to be for him. And so I just took a few minutes, maybe a minute, maybe 90 seconds, and explained to him that, well, today's my daddy's birthday, and my daddy died. and I'm not ever going to be able to see him again. And it's really affecting me today. And I miss him a lot. And he's not going to get to see you grow up, and he's not going to get to know you. And so by the time I'm done with that, I got tears and snot and I'm all over the place. And he says, "Oh, okay." And goes on about his business as a 2-year-old or 3-year-old. How old he was. Yeah, he was 3 at the time. No, he just turned 4. It doesn't really matter. But so he goes on about his business. And I think about that, and I'm like, that was actually pretty revolutionary from the stereotypical culture that I was brought up in. I mean, my dad wasn't that way, but like all of the dads on TV were, and or most of them anyway. And I'm like, so what I actually did there was suppress the urge to, be the stoic tough guy and actually open up and be vulnerable. And I showed my son what a grown man expressing grief in a healthy way looks like. And so
Yeah.
uh,
So
I
you were able to recognize. I mean, it starts with recognition. You recognize that moment,
mhm,
from everything you've done prior and what you were wanting to change with
mhm,
your raising your child. It came to a head right there, and you recognize that moment and what you did with it. Just like mentioned earlier, where you want to catch them being good,
right.
be proud of this. But what you just spoke to was what we call a teaching moment.
Sure.
And like you've said, you want to make with your child, with your son, you want to share, create, recognize situations to make a better situation, or teach him. And that was a perfect teaching moment.
It was.
Everything came together. And so he will process that on a level that he's only able to, because his development is not at a place where he can go too deep into it.
Mhm.
But when similar things like that happen later in life, you've kind of laid the foundation.
Right.
And he'll you know maybe he'll recognize it, maybe he won't, but innately he'll build upon that experience. And it's a healthy thing. You're teaching, you're modeling healthy emotions,
Yeah.
address it, and it's okay.
Yeah, and that's the point. Whether he consciously recognizes it or not when he's, in his 20s or his
Right.
50s or whatever, it doesn't matter, because what will happen is the stimulus will happen, and then he will run the program. The program will run by itself. It's in there.
Right.
And that's something that I have in the forefront of my mind with everything that we do. Is like, at this age, up to about 7 or 8, almost everything we're doing is somehow installing a program. And how is this program going to serve him when he's my age? And so,
and 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 I meant to bring this up earlier, that I didn't recognize it at the time, but I had my troubles in college, and I went off to a big school and got mixed up in the wrong stuff, and didn't go to class, and I bottomed out hard,
mhm.
and I suffered from major anxiety that filtered into depression. And I was able to get some help to work through that, and I'm so grateful, you know, for that today. But I forgot my train of thought on that. The point I was going to make. Oh well, my bad. But
That's
but
fine.
anyway, um, your son and that, it'll come to me later. But
That's
anyway,
fine.
something I wanted to bring up too is, we talked about the movement, the dad frat movement. What is dad frat? Dad frat means proud dad. So number one, we have to recognize the change, which we're talking about, the changes that we've made over the last 30, 40 years. Okay, right? So that's the first part. The second part is what you spoke to. We're going to celebrate that.
Yes.
Yeah, we're going to celebrate that's happening, and we're embracing that. And we're saying, yeah, that is happening, and we freaking love it. Okay. But there's more to it, and you've already spoken to it, and it's with the guys in the group that you're with, who started that group to support each other on issues and advice and thoughts and support that they naturally create that group to help each other out. Well, that's a part of the movement too, because after celebrate, I like to think of the next step is connect.
Right.
We're going to connect. We're connecting with you. We're connecting together. I want to connect with the guys in your group that started that group originally that you're in. I'd like to meet them one day and talk to them about their story. So it's recognizing, celebrating. Now we're going to connect with these other dads, and then the last part of it I like to think of is support. Dave, how can I support you with something? Whether it's in a group or going forward, if something comes up, you know, as a father, as a dad, you've
Mhm.
got a 5-year old, I've got a 17, I've got a 20, I've got a 23, I've got a 26-year old. What can I do to support you? Uh, you just reach out anytime. I'm there
Right.
for you. So we're going to open up more of those connections and relationships with this whole process or movement, and nothing but good can come out of it in my mind.
Agreed. I agree. Um, yeah, I think that there's not much that I can think of that is a more complete expression of the strong aspects of masculinity than a bunch of men talking about this is what's going on with me. I can help you. This is what's going on with you. Can you help me? And let's draw on that. Let's build on that and let's let that evolve, you know?
Right. And it will, and it is, and it'll pick up momentum more as things like this get out there. I can't tell you how many times, Dave, I've gone into some of these groups that we're in, these Facebook dad groups, and I've seen a post, a dad, who knows where, Fargo, North Dakota, says, "Dads, fellow dads, I am really struggling right now. Can anybody talk?" Then you've got a string of 20 or 30 dads jumping in, DM me, here's my cell, call
Mm-hmm.
me anytime. To me, I get chills thinking about that. I've seen that over and over and over in
Yes.
some of these groups. And that's something that I believe we're going to build on.
Yep. I think that it's taking the role of protect and provide, which we all understand is part of the job description. And there's been the negative stereotype that evolved out of that, of course, as it's been portrayed. But I think that it in a digital age, it restores some of the primal tribalness of human interaction that we can use modern technology to be part of a tribe of men who are there to protect and help each other. Because whether we realize it or not, subconsciously, part of what is probably driving that is if I see Seth, he makes a post, I'm really having a hard time. Can somebody talk to me or who's available or whatever? And I respond to that on a deep subconscious level, it triggers a part of that protector provider of like, I'm not only protecting my own family, I'm protecting the species because I'm going to help him. I don't know what his problem is, but I'm going to help him to deal with the problem and protect him from whatever the negative consequences of that are, thereby by extension, help protect his family and help protect everything. I think that there's
Yeah.
something that's hardwired into us that goes along with that, um, to where we want to protect, we want to provide, and we want to help.
Oh, I agree. I agree. There's different levels there. Um, but like I mentioned, it's I see it I see it more and more on there, and it makes me feel good. And you know, dad frat, the word itself is dad plus fraternity is dad frat. Well, what's a fraternity? No, this isn't Greek life. This isn't Animal House. although we wouldn't mind it being Animal House, and we wouldn't mind Belushi being here, and we wouldn't mind a food fight, but that's not what we're talking about. It's a fraternity is just a group of people that
It's
have
a
something in
brotherhood.
common.
It's a
It's a
brotherhood.
it's a brotherhood. I mean, it's a brotherhood. It's a fraternity. Call it what you want, but it's just um, you know look at the many definitions: like-minded individuals or
Hmm.
people that have something in common together. We could draw out the Venn diagrams here if we
Right.
want. Go back to algebra in seventh grade. But it's yeah, it's recognizing we're not alone. We're part of this group. It's a wonderful thing, and together we can make it better. Together, look at our country. I don't want to go too crazy deep, but our country's divided. There
Mhm.
is so much negativity. It's embarrassing where our country is right now. If we're going to rely upon the community, the local government, the federal government to fix all these things, I think we're in a lot of trouble. I think it needs
Yes.
to start right here with you, with me, with all those dads in those groups in the homes talking about some of the things that we've been talking about. We have to try to do a better job. We can all, I mean, I feel like I did a pretty good job with my kids, raising my kids, but we can always do better, you
Sure.
know? And I think that's what, this whole concept of, dad frat or this movement's all about is, um, we have to do better working together as dads, supporting, connecting. And I'm not just talking about us here on the Facebook groups. I'm talking about dads of all religions, dads of all ethnicities, dads of all races, all socioeconomic backgrounds. Who cares? Throw all those differences out and let's look at the common denominator, and the common denominator in the bottom is DAD. We're dads, and we all have to work together to make
Definitely.
it better.
Definitely. I love that mission statement. I love it. This is the point where we're coming towards the end, and I like to go into rapid fire questions, if that's okay with you. I'll just throw a question out. You give me a short little answer, and then we'll wrap the whole thing up after that. Does that sound good?
I pick C.
Okay. That's an odd that's an odd answer for the question I'm about to ask, but
No,
yeah.
I'm just
Yeah, I
going
know.
back to my high school days.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
fire away, man.
Yeah.
Fire away.
Name one useless talent that you have.
I can sound like Chewbacca from Star
Let,
Wars.
let's hear it. I have a stool in my kitchen that when you slide it across the floor does a Chewbacca sound, but I'm not able to do that myself. That's pretty cool.
Uh,
What is your favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving,
What is your favorite family meal?
steak,
Mm,
steak, potatoes, um, maybe some broccoli and watermelon. Love watermelon.
you're making me hungry now,
And
bro.
that, yeah, well, I'm thinking what all the whole family likes when we get together because
Yeah,
you got a lot of different taste buds there.
yeah, yeah. What's the
Steak.
most valuable piece of advice you've ever received?
Um, my wife and I had graduated college, and we were both teaching. I taught third, fourth, first grade, and she was teaching right, first grade. We had to go back to school to take some additional courses to keep our credits up. We had one child at the time. There was a guy in the class with us, and he said he had four kids. And he was a little bit older than us. And I said, "Holy cow, this guy's got four kids." And I was thinking about it. I went up to him. I said, "Hey, so and so, how do you share your love with 4 kids? I'll never forget. He said, Seth, you grow more love with each child.
Ooh, that's good stuff.
That was, and it just hit. It's like,
Mic
wow,
drop.
that's true.
Yeah, that's a mic drop.
Anyway,
Yeah.
there you go.
So to contrast that, what's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh boy, there's so much of it that I can't really narrow it down. Um, I can't think of anything. Probably selling. I've never been into stocks, but there was a crash in 80, I don't know, 88 or 87. I had a little bit of stock. I was doing the market, and some guy said, you need to just sell all that stuff. So I sold it all and got rid of it. And some of that stuff is worth a lot of money now.
Right. Um, David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar?
Sammy Hagar.
And finally, share a cherished family tradition that you hope to pass on, whether something you inherited from your childhood and your ancestors, or something that you've created with your family that you want to see, 20, 30 generations from now when we're all gone and forgotten.
Well, it's a tradition, but it's not for everybody, and it's actually happening this Wednesday, actually Thursday through Saturday. Back in 1992, my dad and my oldest brother, who has since passed away in 2002, um, we went out to Las Vegas for March Madness and just on a vacation, and we watched the games Thursday and Friday, and we kind of bet a little bit on the games. Well, that turned into an annual event, and we've been going to Vegas every year for March Madness
Hmm.
and just watching the games Thursday and Friday. We stopped going to Vegas in about 4 years ago because, first of all, we were sick of Vegas, and it took so long to get out there. They legalized sports betting in Biloxi, Mississippi, which is a 6.5 hour drive from Jacksonville. So now we drive over to Biloxi. We're going to be doing the same thing on Wednesday, and I hope my boys can come, you know, and join, and even the girls. It's fun. I love sports, and that's something I think that I hope they keep that tradition going.
That's cool.
We go with buddies every year.
Mhm.
It's a group of guys, and it's pretty much the same group. And if you miss a year, it's usually because of the birth of a child or a death in the family or
Yeah.
something like that. But it's one of those things we just look forward to, the annual migration. But I'd use that one. I know that's kind of cheesy.
Well, no, that's cool. That is cool. I love it. Well, that is it for today. I want to again thank you, Seth, for being on. If anybody wants to check out the merchandise, then go to dadfrat.com and pick up a cool hat or a cool t-shirt while you're there. And it's been fun getting to know
And
you a
then,
little bit. Go ahead.
and also too, Dave, sorry to interrupt it on the merchandise. Yeah, we'll see about that stuff. But what I really want to do
Uh-huh.
is, if you're a proud dad or any proud dads, join us. And our group's just starting off right now. It's Dad Frat group, and answer a few questions. It's a private group, like the
On,
ones that we're in.
on Facebook, right?
I'm sorry, yeah, on Facebook, and join our group. And um, I've got some cool stuff planned for it, in the group as it starts to grow. But yeah, that would be fantastic if proud dads could join us.
Sure thing. I'll make sure to put a link in the show notes to the Facebook group as well.
All right, all right. Well, listen, I appreciate your time, Dave, and look forward to talking more in the future. And anything I can do to help out with your cause, you've got my info.
Appreciate it, man. That is it for this episode of the Advancing Man Project podcast. I'm Dave Whitley, and we will see you next time.